Yeah, I love this moment. I love this realization. I love this story because it's what hooked me early on. And it's really funny when people make this connection. There's no nouns, prop operations. There's no HR. There's no follow up. No one's going to check in or demand. Like you won a prop house round and you were one of 4 winners, 4 or 5. And these are experiments. There were 3 or 4 other people that won these alternative front end lots of ETH to go experiment. And I love this part of it. There are talented builders. You got the ETH immediately as soon as you won. I mean, maybe the next day, but there's no half up front. There's no show us proof of concept. There's no handover code. You just get it. There's trust that you're going to deliver because in this space, it's all about reputation. And you delivered an amazing product. Where it goes from here was kind of either up to the community. There's a little bit of just like waiting for organic response. People may hate it. You may get no users. It may become the new preferred front end. For me, it's the front end I go to because I love the data aspect of it. I love the look of it. It's very new. As far as front ends go, we see a lot of things that are like quote unquote like nounish in their design. And this is not, it's new. And to me, it's, more interesting. And so I love looking at all the data points. It's really cool to see if a bidder is bidding a bunch, you have number of bids, you have the number of nouns that they own. People really seem to care about the number of nouns. And then all these other little surprise and delight things like we talked about are just littered throughout this app. But I love this moment of handing over the ETH and then just letting the builders build. And then I think the best idea will win, as always. I think it'll just rise at the top, but there's less, maybe just interference, I guess. And I think you guys have a great product to show for it. And the auto bidder is really interesting too, which kind of reminds me to the beginning of our conversation. What if other DAOs end up using this? Like, what if no one uses your client, but you built an auto bidder? And then people just was like, hey, thank you. I really appreciate this. I'm going to use this to acquire a noun or multiple nouns or whatever. It's just funny.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the conversation we had in the beginning of this hour, which was, hey, there are some side quests that end up being more important than the primary quest that you have. And I feel like this is totally fine. This is how things work. And to me, it doesn't feel like we wasted work on something else. It feels like it's great that we discovered these things, and some of them might be more useful to others than others. And you never know in the beginning upfront. Making this analysis itself would cost at least as much as building the thing and shipping it and getting people to sort of use it. So that's been great. To your point about receiving ETH and now it's trust-based, honestly, as a ethical builder, it's a lot of stress because now every time I second guessing myself, was it worth this much for this work or should I stop? And this adds some anxiety and some stress to the process where hey, now I got this fund upfront and now we need to deliver. And I feel responsibility, I guess, for this fund and responsibility to deliver something useful. And I guess on the high level of developers and designers to get this throughout where the funds, when they get in, you're I don't know, this trust has a lot of weight to it. It's a lot of responsibility that you accept, which is a double-edged sword, and have to know how to deal with that as well.
Yeah, I imagine that's especially heavy because it was a mandated round, which is sizable compared to most prop house rounds. But I tend to agree there was a little added pressure there. And I think the time frame of a month was part of the pressure because you set up a lot of the root infrastructure and foundational stuff. And that's shit, is that worth it? Or do we spend more on the more visible aspect of it, the front end and some of the stuff that you've mentioned, the polish and all of that?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of that is just because it's new, not taking away from your feelings. If you felt stressed, you felt stressed. But just from being around nouns from the beginning and seeing a bunch of props, I don't even know that I would worry too much about the timeline thing. I don't remember if you set that timeline because you guys were part of the first mandated round, right? I don't remember if we set that month timeline or if you guys were we'll do it in a month. But at the end of the day, no one's going to care that much. I mean, that's trying to set some checks and balances, but no one really cares if it takes a month and a half for 2 months, I think. They just want builders to build cool stuff, right?
I guess a month with our own mental math calculation of if we take this as a contract work, this is how much hours we would spend. And it felt good to set a deadline because that sort of just forces you to prioritize stuff. You get carried away by one thing or another thing. But if you have a time pressure, at least even self-induced, at least it gives you an ability to make that trade-off, right? Do I put in this little detail? Do I refactor this code? And we didn't have explicit goal of open source and stuff. So we got in some fun details, but on the expense of the code just not being as clean as it could have been if we wanted to open source it. So that month deadline was kind of good forcing function for us to make these hard calls and prioritize things.
Yeah, and like I said before, a lot of that stress is probably related to us usually expecting some of these deadlines and check-ins and more typical client-based structure that this is brand new for us.
Yeah. And for the record, you're not the first people I've had very similar conversations with. So yeah, maybe it's something we can work on our end, but I know that like from Noun side, they don't want to manage, right? That's the trade-off. The opposite being someone breathing down your neck, being very wary of where our funds are going and checking in way too much. That's stress on the other side.
Yeah, I totally get it. We appreciate the flexibility, but at the same time, I think we're just a little not super used to it.
Yeah, but I guess it's with the experience, it comes through. Like now it feels a little more natural. And like if I were to advise a new company going in this, I would have a ton to talk to them about and like give them some advice, but also like going into some other projects that are maybe DAO funded, Nouns or other DAOs, right? Now having that experience, it gives me some reference points and some strategies to work forward. Yeah.
Totally, because say you were to work on an official Nouns proposal, it's the opposite. You guys would write exactly what you would do when you would do it. You can have checkpoints of half up front, half at the end, that kind of stuff. So Prop House just kind of flips it on its head and does things a little backwards there.
Which is fun. Like I love this aspect of Web3 and crypto in general is like people are open to experiments and they try things out. So I feel like it's great.